So today, we're going deep on something pretty interesting, Superman.
Okay.
We're doing a deep dive into the psychology of Superman.
All right.
Now, you might be thinking, what could a comic book character possibly teach us about?
Right.
Life and masculinity and all this stuff.
Interesting.
Well, we've got a book here called Superman Psychology, Rediscover the Masculine Strength of Hope. And we're going to be pulling out some really fascinating insights, I think, from this book.
Yeah, the book starts off with a really interesting point, I think, about masculinity. You know how traditional masculine archetypes seem to be kind of fading in our modern society?
Yeah, like those strong, silent types like John Wayne.
Exactly.
Clint Eastwood.
Eastwood, yeah.
You don't see those heroes anymore.
Yeah.
It's like,
yeah, and it makes you wonder, is something valuable being lost
right.
in this shift?
Like, what's going on here?
Yeah, it's like, are we losing, the classic masculine virtue?
It's like, what is a man?
Right, exactly. What does it even mean?
What does it mean to be a man anymore?
Yeah, and so the book actually uses Superman as a counterpoint to this trend.
Okay.
Superman, he kind of embodies those classic masculine virtues like strength, selflessness, really strong moral compass.
Right.
But he's also compassionate and empathetic,
Right.
and he's not afraid to show his emotion.
So he's like a more well-rounded.
Exactly. A
like,
more nuanced and complex picture.
yeah, I like that. It's like he's not just brute force.
Right.
He's got depth.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And, the book really dives into this idea of hope and how that's really kind of a defining characteristic of Superman. Hope is not just some kind of naive optimism, but it's really a powerful motivator.
Oh, yeah?
For resilience and for overcoming any challenges that you might face.
It's like that Rolling Stones quote.
Yes.
You can't always get what you want, but if you try, sometimes you just might find you get what you need.
Exactly.
Man, that is so true.
So true.
So powerful. And I think that's why part of Superman's appeal is this idea that
I agree.
even when things are tough, there's always hope.
There's always a reason to keep fighting to believe in a better future.
Yeah.
Okay,
now this next part really got me thinking. The book talks about the difference between selflessness and altruism.
Okay.
And I'll be honest, I always thought those were the same thing.
Right.
But apparently they're not. Superman embodies true altruism.
So the book really digs into that distinction.
Yeah. So what is that all about?
So selflessness can sometimes be motivated by a desire to avoid negative consequences, or maybe even gain approval from other people, right? Like you're doing something selfless, but you're really kind of doing it for yourself.
So it's like a selflessness.
Right, exactly. But altruism is different because it's really driven by a genuine concern for the well-being of others.
So you're doing it.
You're doing it just because.
Out of the goodness of your heart.
Exactly, because it's the right thing to do.
Okay.
Not because you expect anything in return.
So it's like when Superman sacrificed to save Metropolis from Doomsday.
Perfect example.
Yeah.
It's a textbook case.
He wasn't doing it for the glory. He wasn't doing it for any recognition. He was putting everyone else.
He was putting the needs of others above his own.
So that's like true altruism.
That's what the book calls heroic altruism.
Wow. So it's not just about being nice or helpful.
Right.
It's about this deeper sense of...
It's a deeper sense of responsibility for others.
That's pretty intense.
Yeah. It's like recognizing that we're all interconnected and we should be acting in ways that benefit the greater good.
Okay, so we were talking about role models and stuff.
Yeah.
And it made me think about Superman's parents.
Right.
Because the book really highlights how the Kents, his adoptive parents, played a huge role in shaping his moral compass.
They instilled in him this really strong sense of right and wrong. Right. They taught him about honesty and integrity and compassion.
So it's like those early influences,
absolutely,
especially from parents,
really
can shape a person's character,
shape who you become.
Like nature and nurture working together.
Exactly. Yeah. He has his Kryptonian heritage, which gives him the power.
Right.
But it's those values that he learns from the Kents.
Okay, now there's a section in the book about the Oedipal complex.
Okay.
I'll admit I had to look that one up.
Right.
But basically the book says that Superman's story doesn't really fit the typical Oedipal pattern.
So the Oedipal complex...
Can you break that down for us?
Yeah, in simple terms, it's this theory that suggests that, young boys develop this kind of unconscious rivalry with their fathers for their mother's affection.
Right.
But Superman's relationship with his adoptive father, Jonathan Kent, is totally different.
Yeah. One of deep respect and admiration.
Yeah, he sees him as a mentor.
Exactly.
A guide.
Not a rival.
Not a rival.
Yeah.
So he's breaking the mold, so to speak.
So he's kind of showing us a different model. For how men can relate to each other.
To each other and to women.
Yeah.
Based on respect and mutual understanding.
Yeah. Well, this is where things get really interesting.
Okay.
The book talks about vulnerability as a strength, which sounds kind of counterintuitive.
Yeah, actually.
Especially when you're talking about Superman.
When we think about Superman, it's like, how can he be vulnerable?
Yeah.
But the book makes this case that is his emotional depth and empathy that actually makes him so strong.
Okay, so he's not afraid to show his emotions.
Exactly.
Connect with people.
Right.
Be affected by suffering.
Yes, he's in touch with those emotions.
So he's not just a powerful alien,
Right.
but he's a deeply feeling
He's also
human being.
a deeply feeling human being.
And that's what makes him relatable.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And, this idea that vulnerability is a strength, I think, is something that a lot of men struggle with.
Yeah.
We're often taught to suppress our emotions, to be tough and stoic.
Right.
But the book really argues that embracing vulnerability can make us more resilient, more compassionate, more connected to others.
So it's about finding that balance
Exactly.
between strength and sensitivity.
Between strength and sensitivity.
You're not being afraid to be both.
Exactly. And Superman, in many ways, embodies that balance.
This is fascinating stuff. I'm already seeing Superman in a whole new light. We'll be back soon to delve even deeper into the psychology of Superman and what his story can teach us about masculinity and hope.
Welcome back to our deep dive into Superman psychology, rediscovering the masculine strength of hope.
So, in the last part, we were talking about vulnerability as a strength.
Right.
Which is not something you typically think about.
No, not at all.
When you think about Superman.
Right, it's a paradox. It's like a paradox.
Right.
How can Superman be vulnerable?
Right, and we tend to think of masculinity as this kind of stoicism, this idea of like,
strong, silent type.
yeah, the impenetrable fortress.
Right.
But the book makes this argument that true strength actually comes from embracing vulnerability.
So it's kind of like, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger.
Exactly.
But on an emotional level.
On an emotional level, yeah, it's not about physical toughness. It's about being able to bounce back from those emotional setbacks.
Yeah.
And the book suggests that, by acknowledging our vulnerabilities, by allowing ourselves to be open and authentic,
Yeah.
that actually deepens our capacity for empathy and connection and, forming those genuine relationships with others.
So how does that actually play out in Superman's story? Because he always seems so in control.
Well, remember, Superman is vulnerable to kryptonite.
Oh, right.
He feels very deeply the suffering of others.
Yeah. And, he's constantly grappling with balancing his dual identity as Clark Kent and Superman.
Yeah, it's like a constant...
It's a constant struggle.
Yeah.
And so, even though he's super powered,
Yeah.
he's not immune to feeling the weight of the world
Yeah.
or, even just everyday struggle.
Right.
And I think, his vulnerabilities don't diminish his strength. They actually enhance it.
Yeah.
They make him more compassionate, more understanding, and more connected to the human experience.
I think that's what makes these characters so compelling.
I agree.
They're not flawless.
Yeah.
Their imperfections
Yeah.
make them...
That's why Superman resonates with
Yeah.
people, because he's not just this distant godlike figure.
Right.
He's someone who understands what it means to be human, to experience pain and loss, and to still choose to fight for what's right.
Okay, so the book also talks about Superman's relationship with Lois Lane.
Right.
And, it's definitely not your typical damsel in distress
Not at all.
situation.
No,
Lois is a force of nature.
she's a force of nature.
And
the book really highlights that, how
Yeah.
their relationship really challenges traditional gender roles and expectations.
yeah, because she's not waiting around to
Yeah.
be rescued.
She's out there taking risks.
She's a reporter.
She's a brilliant reporter.
She's putting herself in dangerous situations.
Absolutely.
All the time.
Yeah, she's making her own mark on the world.
Yeah, and Superman respects that.
He respects that about her.
Yeah.
And, their relationship is built on this foundation of mutual respect and admiration.
Yeah.
And, a shared sense of adventure.
Their partner.
Their partner,
Yeah.
both in their personal lives and in their fight for justice.
I think it's great
Yeah.
to see a couple like that where the woman
I agree.
isn't just a sidekick or a love interest.
Right, she's an equal partner.
She's an equal.
Yeah. So the book also talks about emotional intelligence.
I have to admit, when I saw that in there, I was like, oh, here comes the psychobabble.
Right.
But the way they connect it to Superman
Makes sense.
actually makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So for those of us who don't know,
Right.
remind us what emotional intelligence is all about.
So emotional intelligence, or EQ, is really the ability to understand and manage our own emotions.
Okay.
But it's also about recognizing and responding effectively to the emotions of others. And the book argues that Superman, despite being an alien with superpowers, actually demonstrates a high level of EQ.
So it's not just about being strong and powerful.
Right. It's also about being sensitive and understanding and being able to kind of navigate
Yeah.
those tricky emotional situations that we all face.
Okay, so how does Superman actually show emotional intelligence?
Well, think about it. He's able to connect with people on a very deep level.
Right.
He can understand their perspectives, and he can respond with compassion, but also assertiveness when it's needed.
Right.
Think about how he interacts with Lois. with his parents.
Even with his enemy.
Right.
He shows this genuine ability to understand where they're coming from.
Yeah.
Even when he disagrees with them.
So he's strong and powerful.
Yeah.
But he's also
He's emotionally aware.
emotionally aware.
Yes.
Yeah.
And in tune with the people around him.
That's a pretty good combination.
It's a powerful combination.
Yeah.
And it's something I think we can all learn from,
Yeah.
regardless of gender.
Okay, so Superman also has this incredibly strong moral compass.
Absolutely.
Like he's just this embodiment.
Yeah, truth, justice, and the American way.
Right. He always seems to know what's
Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
even when it's a really tough call.
Right.
And I think that's part of what makes him such an inspiring figure.
Yeah.
You know, in a world that often feels very morally ambiguous.
Yeah.
Superman provides a sense of stability, a beacon of hope.
He's like the friend
Exactly.
we all wish we had.
That we all wish we had.
The one who always knows the right thing to do,
The one who always knows.
even when we don't have a clue.
And the book really emphasizes that this moral compass isn't about just blindly following rules.
Okay.
It's about making decisions that align with your values
Yeah.
and your sense of integrity.
So it's about doing what you believe is right,
Exactly.
even when it's hard or unpopular.
Even when it's hard, unpopular, or puts you at risk.
So he's got that moral courage.
He has that moral courage,
Yeah.
and it's something we can all aspire to.
Okay, but let's be real.
Yeah.
Superman is an alien with superpowers.
Right.
Most of us can't relate to that.
Right.
What about the more?
Well, this is where the book's discussion
Yeah.
of Superman's journey to self-actualization
Self-actualization.
is
Yeah.
so relevant.
Break that down for us.
So self-actualization in simple terms is really about becoming the best version of yourself,
Okay.
reaching your full potential,
Okay.
living a life that's aligned with your values, your passions, your purpose.
So figuring out what you're good at,
Exactly.
what you care about.
Figuring out what you care about and then using those things
Yeah.
to make a positive impact on the world.
So even Superman, with all of his amazing abilities,
Right.
still goes through this process
He still goes through it.
of self-discovery.
Self-discovery and self-actualization.
It's like, yeah, I can fly.
Right.
I can shoot lasers from my eyes.
But there's more to life than that.
But there's more to it than that.
Exactly.
And I think we can all relate to that.
I think so too.
We all have our own unique talent.
We all have our own unique talents and abilities
And it's up to us to figure out how to use them
to make a positive impact,
make the world a better place.
to make the world a better place.
All right, so the book also talks about Superman's leadership skills.
Yeah.
And I got to say, the guy's a natural.
He's a natural leader. He inspires people.
Yeah.
And the book really argues that Superman embodies a particular kind of leadership
Okay.
that's not just about power and control,
Okay.
but about inspiring others, creating a shared vision, and empowering people to contribute their own unique skills and talents.
So it's not about being the boss.
Right.
It's about being the leader.
It's about being a leader who brings people together
Yeah.
and motivates them to achieve something bigger than themselves.
It's like the coach everyone wants to play for.
Yeah, I like that analogy. It's
Yeah.
like, tough, but fair, inspiring, always pushing you to be better.
Yeah. And when people feel valued and respected and empowered,
Right.
they're going to be more engaged,
Absolutely.
committed to that goal.
More committed to achieving that shared goal.
Makes me think about all the bad bosses I've had.
All right.
Maybe they should have read this book.
Maybe so.
But jokes aside,
Yeah.
this kind of leadership isn't just for superheroes.
It's not just for superheroes.
It's something we can all strive for.
It's something we can all strive for in our own lives.
Right, whether it's at work or in our families or
Like
in our
Griffin.
community.
Yeah.
So we've been talking about all the great things about
Yeah.
Superman.
Yeah.
But even Superman isn't invincible.
Right.
He experiences stress and burnout.
It's a good reminder that even superheroes are human.
He's constantly facing pressure,
Constant pressure.
battling supervillains, dealing with the media.
Right. Trying to maintain a secret identity.
It's got to be exhausting.
It's got to take a toll.
So how does he manage all that?
Well, the book explores that.
Yeah.
And it really highlights how Superman manages stress and avoids burnout.
Okay.
He has a strong support system.
Okay.
He takes time for self-care.
Right.
And he never loses sight of his purpose.
So even Superman needs downtime.
Even Superman needs downtime.
Makes me feel a little bit better
It should.
about my Netflix binges.
Yeah.
Okay. What are some of his self-care secrets?
Well, the book highlights the importance of his support system.
Okay.
Lois Lane, his parents, his friends,
Okay.
they provide him with love, connection, a sense of belonging,
Yeah.
which are all essential.
No man is an island.
Exactly. We all need people we can lean on.
Yeah.
And even Superman, with all his powers, still needs that human connection.
Right.
The book also mentions that, Superman makes time for things that he enjoys.
Okay.
Flying, playing the piano, spending time with loved ones.
Okay.
He doesn't just work all the time.
So he makes time for himself.
He makes time for himself to relax
Right,
and
yeah.
to recharge.
So it's like Saving the world is important,
Right.
but so is taking care of yourself.
But so is taking care of yourself.
Self-care isn't selfish.
Self-care is not selfish. It's essential.
Okay.
If we're not taking care of ourselves, we can't be there for others.
Yeah.
We can't do our best work.
You got to put on your own oxygen mask first.
Exactly.
Yeah.
A perfect analogy.
Yeah.
We have to make sure we're taking care of our own needs
Yeah.
in order to be able to help others.
Okay, so besides having a good support system and taking time for himself,
Right.
what else helps Superman deal with the pressure?
So the book emphasizes the importance of perspective. You know, despite facing these incredible challenges, Superman never loses sight of the bigger picture.
Yeah.
He knows his purpose is to protect humanity, to fight for justice, and to inspire hope.
Yeah.
And that sense of purpose gives him the strength and resilience to keep going.
So it's like, yeah, this is tough,
Right.
but it's worth it
It's worth it.
because I'm making a difference.
Because you're making a difference.
And that kind of perspective
That kind of perspective can be really powerful.
can be really powerful.
Yeah, when we focus on our values, on
Yeah.
our purpose, on the positive impact that we're making,
Yeah.
it helps us kind of reframe those challenges as opportunities for growth.
So it's not about avoiding stress.
It's not about avoiding stress.
It's about how we view it.
It's about how we view those challenges and what we focus on.
Okay.
And that's where mindset comes in.
Mindset.
Yeah, our beliefs, our attitudes.
Yeah.
They have a huge impact on how we experience the world and how we cope with stress.
It's like Henry Ford said, whether you think you can or you think you can't.
You're right.
You're right.
And you know, Superman really embodies this positive, growth-oriented mindset.
Yeah.
He believes in himself,
Yeah.
believes in humanity,
Right.
and he believes that good will ultimately prevail.
That's a powerful belief.
It's a powerful belief, and it's something we can all cultivate.
Yeah.
It's about challenging those negative thoughts, replacing them with positive affirmations.
So we have the power
Yeah.
to choose our
to
thoughts.
choose our thoughts and beliefs.
And our beliefs really shape how we experience life.
They shape how we experience life.
It's like a mental superpower.
It is like a mental superpower.
Yeah.
It's recognizing that we're not just victims of our circumstances.
Right.
We have the power to shape our reality by
Yeah.
choosing how we think and respond to challenges.
This has been incredible.
Yeah.
I cannot wait to see what else we uncover
Me too.
in the final part
Yes.
of our deep dive.
I'm excited.
We'll be right back. All right, so we're back and we've talked about vulnerability and emotional intelligence and all this stuff.
Yeah.
But there's this one other kind of paradox
Right.
about Superman that I wanted to get into.
Okay.
Because on the one hand, he's this incredibly powerful being
Yeah.
who can handle pretty much anything on his own.
Right.
Like that whole battle with Doomsday that was a solo mission.
Exactly. He faces a lot of his challenges alone.
Right.
Yeah.
But he also has all these incredibly strong relationships
He does.
with Lois and his parents,
friends.
his friends and other heroes.
Yep.
So it's like he needs those connections.
Well, the book argues that it's not about needing them in a practical sense.
Okay.
It's more about, you know, recognizing that connection and interdependence
Yeah.
is part of what makes him human.
So it's not a weakness.
It's not a weakness. It's actually a sign of his emotional maturity.
Okay, so like a lot of guys are taught to be strong and silent and handle everything on their own.
Right.
Is that kind of what the book is getting at?
Yeah, there's this idea that asking for help or relying on others is somehow less masculine.
Right.
But Superman's story really challenges that notion.
Yeah.
He shows us that even the strongest among us need connection and support.
So is that lone wolf mentality actually hurting men?
Well, the book suggests that it can lead to isolation and emotional suppression.
Yeah.
And, you know, an inability to form those truly meaningful relationships.
So how do we break free from that?
Well, I think the book emphasizes the importance of vulnerability and trust.
Yeah.
Superman is able to build those strong connections because he's willing to let his guard down to show his true self, even if it means risking getting hurt.
It's a big step for a lot of guys.
It is. It's a challenge.
Because we're taught to keep our emotions in check.
Right.
Don't show weakness.
But the rewards are worth it.
Yeah.
You know, strong relationships bring joy and support and meaning and a sense of belonging.
Like no man is an island.
Exactly. We're meant to connect with each other.
Yeah.
And it's not just about romantic relationships.
Right. The book talks about how Superman values all kinds of connections with friends, with family, with mentors, with colleagues.
So we're stronger together.
We're stronger together than we are alone.
That's a good message.
It's a powerful message,
Especially in today's world.
especially today.
It's like we're so divided.
Yeah. We're so divided and polarized.
It's crazy.
And I think that's part of why Superman continues to resonate with audience.
Yeah.
He reminds us that we're all connected.
Yeah.
We all have something to offer.
Right.
And that we need each other.
You know, it's funny. We started this whole deep dive thinking we were just going to learn about Superman.
Right.
But it's turned into something much bigger.
It has.
Isn't that?
It's the power of stories.
Yeah.
They can challenge our assumptions, broaden our perspectives, and help us to see ourselves and the world in a new light.
This book has definitely done that for me. I've learned a lot about masculinity and strength and connection.
Me too.
So what's the one thing you want our listeners to take away from this whole conversation? I think it's this we all have the potential to be heroes in our own lives.
That's a good one.
You know? We don't need superpowers to make a difference or to inspire others or to create a better world.
Right.
We just need to believe in ourselves, cultivate our strengths, embrace our vulnerabilities, and connect with others in a meaningful way.
Well said. And if you're looking for more inspiration, be sure to check out Superman Psychology, Rediscover the Masculine Strength of Hope.
Yes, it's a fascinating read.
It's available on Amazon Kindle and Google Play Books.
It will definitely challenge your assumptions and offer new perspectives on what it means to be a good man in today's world.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
It was my pleasure.
We'll see you next time.